So at what point in the last 25-ish years did Space Jam become this beloved, heartfelt cult classic? News to me. Hello, everyone. Terrence here with Hollywood Already Did It. If you haven't already, go ahead, like, share, subscribe to the channel, ring that bell below. Anytime we have something, you will be among the first to know. I gotta be honest, I don't have much of an affinity for the original Space Jam. I know more and remember more about the soundtrack, which song on there has some issues now. Can't talk about it. Song doesn't exist. But the film itself didn't hit me in any way whatsoever. I'm from Detroit, so let's be honest, didn't have much of an affinity for Michael Jordan. And while I did like the Looney Tunes at that point in time when this film came out, '96, I was entering a part of my life where the kiddie stuff wasn't as important to me. So the Space Jam wave sort of missed me, and the critics ripped that movie apart, similarly to how the word is on this one. So it is amazing to me now that this has become this thing where people are like, oh, don't dare do a Space Jam like that. I love that movie. That movie is great. When I don't remember that much of an affinity for it existing at that point in time. But it did go on to make $250 million, and people do remember it. I do remember at that time, before Space Jam even came out, everybody sort of wearing the hip hop um, Looney Tunes gear. Like I was doing that. That was probably the extent of one of my Looney Tunes. But Looney Tunes was big back then. It was still being actively played on TV. Tiny Toons existed, so that they were still in the zeitgeist. Which leads me to today. And the reason why I just have a lot of questions about this film as a whole. The Looney Tunes are irrelevant. No one, kids don't know, other than passing by of saying, "Hey, that might be Bugs. I don't really know what he does." Taz doesn't have his own show like he did back in the day. Like none of these characters are really known. LeBron is the draw here, and LeBron is known. So LeBron being the biggest basketball player in the world, although I think he is still the face, but I don't know if he's as big as he would have been had this come out about 3 or 4 years ago. Um, but he's the draw. And so going back to Space Jam and kind of doing this whole thing, you're like, all right, well, what's the end? In this version, they sort of bookend the movie with this father son relationship where LeBron does not allow his son to do or be what he really wants to be. He's pushing him towards basketball when his son has inclinations to do. He enjoys basketball, but it's not his passion, it's not what he loves. And so separation happens, and they end up in this basically video game world by this character named Algorithm. Play on the word algorithm. Yeah. Played by Don Cheadle. I need to come at this film in two ways. One as a film goer who watches movies, and one as a person who, while I don't have kids, have to look at it through a kid's eyes. This movie is bad. It's not a good film. But the first Space Jam was not a good movie. There's some rose-colored glasses, uh, retroactive enjoyment of that movie that just baffles me. But neither of these films are good. But this movie is odd. It is bookended by the son saying, "Hey, Dad, I don't want to do this," and runs away, and we get into this labyrinth sort of style world, and we come back out of it. And when it's all said and done, everything's going to be great. But in the middle of this is an hour and 40 minutes worth of Warner Brothers jizzing all over the screen. It's just like, hey, all those things we have? We got Harry Potter, we got Batman, we got this, we got that. That is what this movie is. It stops being about the Looney Tunes. Well, we don't get the Looney Tunes probably until about 45 minutes into the movie, and then when we do, we're just inundated with literally anything else that has ever existed in Warner Brothers property. Godzilla, boom, let's put it in there. King Kong, why not? Put them in there. Animaniacs, they're in there somewhere. And you're kind of like, well, this is just an IP, just smorgasbord of stuff. Why? And the reason why is because the Looney Tunes aren't relevant. And so we have to throw everything else we possibly can with the kitchen sink at them to get them sort of close the gap so that these kids who are watching this now have something else that they can sort of relate to. Like, oh, there's that. I know who that is. I know who that is. Whereas when you see Marvin the Martian, they're like, you know, I don't care who that is, and it becomes a bit of an overload. There is no real plot structure. It's just things happening from set piece to set piece to set piece to kind of get as much IP as we possibly can shove in here, so your brain's just going overloads. Like, I think I enjoy that because I saw something that reminds me of something that I like. Don Cheadle, bless his heart. I won't go too hard on Don because he's a friend. I have people who know him, and so I'm not going to go too hard. But I don't. This feels like a cash grab, a check that he took. He seems like he's having fun. I've never seen him be this over the top. And this ridiculous. It's a hard watch. I'll just say that. But it is a hard watch as an adult. It is a hard watch as an adult who has no connection or affinity for Looney Tunes or for LeBron in this matter. As a kid, though, I imagine there's something in this that you may be able to grab onto. There may be something you love. I had my goddaughter, bless her heart, text me this morning and say she loved it. So it is irrelevant how I feel. The kids enjoy it. And that is what they are trying to get through with this film. And I know as a kid, I would not have enjoyed this because this is a little bit. I do still love cartoons. I do stuff like Luca and Raya and pretty much all the Pixar stuff, How to Train Your Dragon, those type of things enjoy me. There has to be some type of a heartbeat or story through it. There is a heartbeat that attempts to start here, and then that is all thrown away because IP. That's intellectual property for those who don't know. I don't really know why this film is just under 2 hours. The first film was an hour and a half, barely. It was like 88 minutes. This movie clocks in at about an hour and 54. There is no reason this film should be that long. None. Other than Warner Brothers is like, hey, we have your attention now. Let's remind you of all the properties you have. Because there's no story beat that is happening or that is important enough to continue on through this thread. We could easily cut out about 30 minutes of that, like, let's go collect the characters that you don't know in places that you may vaguely know. Remove that. That's not needed. Let's just get to the point of this movie. I don't need to get into the specifics of LeBron's acting talents. I think this will be the first and last time that we see him in that mode, but it is the same way with Michael Jordan. Mike was serviceable, LeBron serviceable. There's no matter of like who's better, who cares. Neither of them are good. So, what I will say though, and as bad as this movie is, and like I said, that first one is also bad, I do think it might be a slightly better film, pacing wise. It just feels more like a movie as opposed to whereas this first Space Jam felt like an extended commercial. That doesn't mean it's good. It's just the structure of how a movie should be done makes a little bit more sense here. It is still too long, and the pacing, while better probably than the original, is still just there's a lot of points where it's like I don't need to be here. The good thing about this, and I'll say this, I do think the Looney Tunes have been extinct, and I do think that there's a world where the Looney Tunes should still be as active or as known as, maybe not on the Mickey Mouse level, just because he owns a whole world, like a world and a land and parks. But they should still be relevant enough as like Sesame Street, where there are entire generations who always will know who Big Bird, Elmo, and Cookie Monster are. There's an entire generation who have no idea who Bugs Bunny is. So if this does nothing else but reintroduce these beloved characters into that world, into these young folks' world, then at least one thing good came out of this. But the movie is certainly not it. So on my scale of once is enough, play it again, Sam, or give me a time stone so I never have to think about this film again. This is a time stone. Erase this. I'm never going to watch this again. Just like I never, until this came out, thought about Space Jam outside of the soundtrack, which at least it has the Quad City DJ song, because the other one I can't talk about. I will say this, it was a good game, and you should probably, for my adults, should do a drinking game while watching this, while the actual basketball game happens in this movie. Look at the audience and just go around and see how many people you see. See the Animaniacs, see look at what you find IP wise, Warner Brothers wise, in that audience. You'll have a great, great time just poking out and picking out all the random characters and memorabilia and personalities you see in the background. It's far more entertaining than the game. What did you guys think about Space Jam: A New Legacy? Go ahead, leave your thoughts and comments in the comments below. If you haven't already, you can follow us on Twitter at HollywoodADI. You can hit us up on email at HollywoodAlreadyDidIt@gmail.com. We also have a podcast with the same name. That's on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere that plays podcasts. We're there. We will be talking about, you got it, this great movie and the franchise that exists on this latest episode, which will be fun because Blake and I are of different generations, and I feel like Space Jam means a lot more to him than it does to me. We also have a second show, sort of a spinoff called Marvel Pair-Ups, where we with guest host Jamie Jurek, where we talk about whatever Marvel show is currently going and pair it up with a movie or a show of its like. For this time, we're doing Loki, and we're pairing those up with time-traveling movies. So you can find that also where podcasts are and here on YouTube as well. But like always, I got my ticket. You got yours.